Hello, I'm Simon Whistler, you're watching TopTenzNet, and in the video today we're looking at the top 10 interesting facts about the board game Monopoly. Monopoly was first produced in 1935 by Parker Brothers and has been ruining friendships and tearing families apart ever since. Despite how frustrating the game is, it's considered the world's most popular, and of 2009, over 250 million copies have been sold. While the game is meant to be played by people of all ages, it's meant to show the dangers of a small group of people accumulating all the wealth. If you're playing the game and someone builds hotels all over the board and all you have is a house on Baltic Avenue, you're going to have to borrow money and then eventually you'll end up bankrupt and losing. It's annoying in the game, but it would be tragic in real life. Number 10. Are you playing the game correctly? Have you ever taken the time to read the rules of Monopoly? Well, probably not, because an overwhelming amount of people don't know the official rules when playing. One rule many people didn't know existed was that if you land on a property and choose not to buy it, the property goes up for auction. The opening bid can start at any price and the highest bidder pays the bank. This speeds up the game, and when playing with these rules, it lasts about an hour to 90 minutes. Another hint if you want to speed up the game that isn't officially in the rulebook is to deal out all the properties at the beginning of the game. One reason that so many of us play Monopoly the same way, which is different from the official rules, is because Monopoly is so popular, and many people are taught how to play it as children. So for generations, nobody really read the rules because older generations would simply teach the younger generation how to play the game. Think about it, if you do remember learning to play Monopoly, was it by reading the instructions, or was it by learning from someone who already knew how to play the game? As for why no one plays the game according to the official rules, it could be because the game is often played by children, and the auctions may have led to fights, so parents omitted the rule and it simply got phased out as the rules of the game were handed down generation to generation. Another common house rule, which isn't in the official rules, is that when fines and taxes are collected, they go into the center of the board and whoever lands on free parking wins the jackpot. However, in the official rules, nothing happens when you land on the free parking space. Finally, some people play that you can't get money while you're in prison, but there is no official rule against this. Since the house rules and the official rules have become so different, Hasbro did a study and ended up releasing an official house rules version of the game. Number 9. 3 most landed on spots include Illinois Avenue, Go, and the B&O Railroad. One thing I need to point out here is that we are talking about the US version of the game. In Britain, we have totally different names for these things. One thing that might be helpful to winning the game is getting the square that is landed on the most. According to computer scientist Truman Collins, who built a simulation of the game, the square most likely to be landed on is jail. This is for several reasons. The first is that if you land on the go to jail square, technically you go straight to jail. Secondly, people roll to get out of prison. All of this to just landing on the prison square and also when you're just visiting. The second most landed on square is Illinois Avenue. This is followed by Go, New York Avenue, and rounding out the top 5 is B&O Railroad. As for the least likely squares to visit, well, those would be the Chance Squares, the Community Chest Squares, and Mediterranean Avenue. When it comes to the most expensive property, Boardwalk, it's the 18th most likely square to be landed on. Number 8. The characters. In Monopoly, there are several different characters and all of them have their own name. The first one is Mr. Monopoly. He is the iconic character who has a 3-piece suit, a top hat, and white hair. Also, a lot of people seem to remember him having a monocle, but he has never actually worn one. It is unclear who the inspiration for Mr. Monopoly is. Some people say that it is famed American banker and financier J.P. Morgan. It would sort of make sense because they both look and dress similarly and are both businessmen. Others believe that it is based on a salesman at Parker Brothers who had business cards with over-the-top caricatures of himself printed on them. Oftentimes he would be wearing a top hat or riding a train. Finally, it could be based on Little Esky, which is a former mascot of Esquire magazine. The character wasn't given a name until 1946, and even then it wasn't announced via Monopoly. Instead, he appeared as the mascot on a different game called Rich Uncle. In the game, the Daily Bugle identifies him as Rich Uncle Pennybags, and he is the man who runs the town. However, in 1999, Hasbro conducted a study and found that many people simply didn't know that Rich Uncle Pennybags was his name, so they changed it to Mr. Monopoly. Of course, there are other characters in the game. On the Community Chest and Chance cards, there is Mr. Monopoly's wife, Maud, and his 3 nephews, Randy, Sandy, and Andy. Finally, there is Officer Mallory, who sends people to jail, and Jake the Jailbird. Number 7. People have killed each other over the game. If you've ever been near a group of people playing Monopoly, you know that players can easily get frustrated. All it takes is one flip of the board to end a friendship. While most adults don't resort to violence when it comes to their frustrations over Monopoly, some games have spiraled violently out of control. One such game happened in Santa Fe, New Mexico on October 25, 2011. 60-year-old Laura Chavez and 48-year-old Clyde Butch Smith were playing the game with their 10-year-old grandson. At some point, Chavez caught Smith cheating. A fight ensued and the grandson was sent into the bedroom, and that's when the grandparents got violent. Smith hit Chavez with a wine bottle and then she went at him with a knife. He was stabbed and slashed around the chest, neck and face, but luckily he survived. Another tragic fight that stemmed from the game happened on July 19, 1991 in Bensalem, Pennsylvania. Two best friends, 25-year-old Mark Sienkowski and 31-year-old Michael J. Klutznick, were playing Monopoly when a fight broke out. It got physical and several punches were thrown. Sienkowski grabbed his compound bow and an arrow and told Klutznick to leave. Klutznick left, and when he was seated in his car, his best friend fired an arrow into his chest. Klutznick ended up dying, and Sienkowski was sentenced to a 9 to 25-year sentence. We like to think that the judge told him to go directly to jail to not pass go and not collect his $200. Number 6. You can win a game with 2 players in 21 seconds. Games of Monopoly are notoriously long and can drag on for hours or even days. On the other end of the spectrum, a professor of sociology at Notre Dame and his son have figured out the quickest way to end a game of Monopoly. It's just 4 turns and 9 rolls of the dice, and the game lasts just 21 seconds. How it would work is that player 1 rolls double sixes and lands on community chest, where they receive $200 because of the bank error in your favor card. Next, player 2 has to land on the income tax square. The next turn involves player 2 getting double 2s and landing on Park Place, where they purchase it, and then double 1s to land on Boardwalk, which they need to purchase as well. Since they got doubles, they can roll again and pass go, collecting $200. Once they are past go, they need to purchase 3 houses for Park Place and 2 for Boardwalk. Player 2 would then land on a chance square and pick the go directly to Boardwalk card. When they do, they won't have enough money and the game is over. Of course, the chances of this happening in real life aren't exactly good. According to a Columbia professor, it would happen, well, once every 2 and then followed by 14 zeros number of times. So he is saying that there is a chance, right? Number 5. The best way to win. As we've already previously mentioned, and will probably continue to mention throughout this video, playing Monopoly can be downright frustrating. However, if you really want to ratchet up the frustration level among your opponents and, well, win in the process, you should follow this strategy, which comes from a Reddit user named Elfie. Basically, the diabolical plan revolves around the houses. There are 32 in the box, and once the houses are sold out, then no one else can buy one. So the plan is simply to buy as many houses as you can. Early in the game, buy a set of properties and build all houses on it, but not a hotel. This can be any set of properties. Later in the game, get a second Monopoly and build up houses on each of those properties. If you get 2 Monopolies containing 3 properties, then that only leaves 8 other houses in the game. Limiting the number of houses is important because houses are needed to build hotels. By monopolizing the houses, it makes it harder for people to progress, and then you can simply outlast them. Number 4. The real creator was a woman who didn't get credit for her invention. The person credited with inventing Monopoly is Charles Darrow, an unemployed heater salesman from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. While Darrow created the Monopoly that we know today, he ripped off the idea. The real inventor was a stenographer named Elizabeth Maggie, who lived in Washington, D.C. Maggie worked at night trying to teach people about the evils of monopolies. She was concerned with the accumulation of wealth and power by a small group of families during the Gilded Age. She thought that this type of control by a small group of people could lead to monopolies, which could have devastating effects on everyday Americans. The problem was that her message was hard to spread because many people simply weren't interested in listening. Looking to spread her message faster, Maggie developed the Landlord's game in 1903 and got a patent on it in 1904. The game was never mass-produced, and instead the game spread through word of mouth. Usually someone would learn of the game and then they would make their own copy of the board and the pieces. In turn, they would then teach it to someone else. One of those people who learned to play the game was Charles Darrow. He pitched the game to Parker Brothers and they eventually bought the rights to it and gave Darrow a royalty. However, Parker Brothers knew that Maggie actually owned the patent investment on the game, so they contacted Maggie and bought the rights to the Landlord's game and another game that she developed for $500. But in a massively jerky move, Parker Brothers never intended to mass-produce the Landlord's game. Instead, they released a few hundred copies of it, but mass-produced Monopoly, which became a massive hit. Beyond the $500, Maggie didn't get any other payments or credit for the game. She died in 1948, and her contributions to the game weren't publicized until the 1970s. Darrow died a millionaire in 1978. Number 3. The unusual story of Marvin Gardens. There are localized versions of Monopoly, but the original game, and one that most people in North America are familiar with, has all of the properties named after streets or areas in Atlantic City, New Jersey, with one exception. That is Marvin Gardens, which was supposed to be Marvin Gardens. While it's a small mistake, it accurately shows the interesting story behind Monopoly. When asked why he chose Atlantic City instead of Philadelphia, where he was born and lived, Charles Darrow said it was because it was his favorite vacation spot. However, what we know from the last entry is that Darrow didn't invent the game. He just signed a deal with Parker Brothers in order to sell it. Before Monopoly's publication, when people made their boards for the Landlord's game, they would localize the street names. Darrow was taught to play the Landlord's game by a couple from Atlantic City, and when Darrow was given a copy of the board by the couple, it contained the wrong spelling of Marvin Gardens. In turn, Parker Brothers copied Darrow's incorrect board. This makes Darrow not only a thief, but a lazy one at that. In 1995, Parker Brothers apologized to the people of Marvin Gardens for the misspelling. However, they still have never credited Maggie's contributions to the game. We just really wanted to emphasize that part once again. Number 2. Monopoly was rejected by Milton Bradley and Parker Brothers. After Maggie developed the game, she didn't get it mass-produced because she didn't want to. She took it to Parker Brothers twice, once in 1910 and once in 1924, and both times it was turned down. The reason they gave was that the game was too political. Jump ahead to 1934, and Darrow pitched his version of the game to both Milton Bradley and Parker Brothers. Both of them sent back rejection letters. Part of the creation myth is that Parker Brothers rejected it for 52 fundamental reasons. However, there is no real evidence of that, and it definitely does not say it in the rejection letter. The game was rejected unanimously by the executives of Parker Brothers because they thought it took too long to play and it was too complex to be popular. Instead, Darrow used his own money to make 7,500 copies, which sold well in stores in Philadelphia, and Parker Brothers changed their mind and struck a deal with Darrow. From there, the game grew to be the biggest board game in history. Number 1. Escape maps were smuggled to British POWs during World War II. When it comes to making maps for war, paper is a terrible material for many reasons. For example, it can't get wet, it rips, it crumples, and so on. A better material for maps is silk, and it has been used for hundreds of years. During World War II, the printing company that had mastered printing on silk was John Waddington Limited. The company was used by the British Secret Service unit MI9, which was the Secret Service unit for escape and evasion, in order to print silk maps. Waddington was also the printer of Monopoly for the United Kingdom. An MI9 agent named Christopher Clayton Hutton came up with the idea to put maps and other materials into board games that would be sent to POW camps. Games were often brought into POW camps by humanitarian and charity groups, and the games wouldn't have drawn too much attention from the enemy. Inside the Monopoly boxes were hidden compartments that contained compasses, tools, maps, and under the money in the game were actual real banknotes. There were 6 different maps created for areas around German POW camps and other maps for Italy. They marked the special Monopoly boxes by putting a red dot on the free parking space. Also, to figure out where the maps should go, periods were added to the end of specific properties. For example, if it was going to Germany, there would be a period after Mayfair, and if it was going to Italy, there would be a period after Marylebone Station. Since the game was the UK version, the properties were named after streets in London, not Atlantic City. Some historians believe that thousands of POWs used the Monopoly games to escape. Since the war, unfortunately, all of the Monopoly escape kits have been destroyed. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already for brand new videos just like this every day of the week. Also, over there on the right are a couple of other videos that you might enjoy if you enjoyed this one, and thank you for watching.